This is News and Views, brought to you by the Senior Citizen Advisory Committee of Montclair. We are a informational and interactive program brought to you by seniors for seniors. We have with us today, as our guest, David Lewis. Mr. Lewis is, and David, I'm sorry, I forgot your title.
I'm president of the Memorial Society of Northeast New Jersey.
And that is great. I'm sure he gave it to you and you heard him. Memorial Society of Northeast New Jersey. One of the things is that very often when we start talking about Memorial Society, people are thinking, and we're not far away from death and dying. But I want you to know a little bit more about David, because this is not just about death and dying, it's about some really important issues. David, talk to us about yourself, right? Your what you did and what you are, okay?
I was a commercial artist all of my career, and a painter. I'm also an amateur pianist, and so I have no history of being in the funeral business or any connection with that. And I got involved with the Memorial Society when a friend of mine asked me if I would serve on the board. This was in 2000. And so I'm now president. I've been president since 2005, when Peter Seckel, the previous president, retired. And in that time, we have expanded. We were called the Memorial Society of Essex, and we absorbed the Central Memorial Society in Bergen County and Passaic County. So now we cover all of Northeast New Jersey.
It's a larger area, yes.
And I think in terms of, we are an all-volunteer organization, with the exception of a part-time administrator that we rely on enormously. She does all of our record keeping and that type of thing.
Okay, I'm going to stop you right there. I want to ask
Yes.
you one question, all right? Because when I like putting that together, the fact that you were an artist. Because I think that when we think about people in art, we think about harmony, we think about order, and I think the Memorial Society, that those things, and I had put down harmony, beauty, preparation, order, and those are things that the Memorial Society kind of stands for. If you had one word that you'd say with the Memorial Society, if you think about that, what is the word that you would use?
Well, basically pre-planning.
Pre-planning.
That the whole mission of the Memorial Society is to encourage people to pre-plan their end-of-life issues. And it involves much more than just picking a funeral director or picking whether you want to be buried or cremated. It involves end-of-life preparation in terms of healthcare directives and healthcare proxies and wills and powers of attorney and organ donation, eye donation, willing your body to University of Medicine and Dentistry, which is another option. Mm-hmm. So that it's a much broader question than just saying, I want to be buried or I want to be cremated. Mm-hmm. So the Memorial Society is basically, it's an educational organization and a service organization.
Very important part of it.
We used to be just a buyer's club. Years ago, when it was first started, the whole idea of it was to have a number of funeral homes that would provide our members with a cheap funeral. Okay. It has expanded greatly, as I've said. It now has become an educational organization that helps people in a broad range of information and education, as well as we still have a number of funeral homes, independently owned, family-owned funeral homes in Northeast New Jersey that cooperate with us and offer very reasonable priced funerals for either direct burial or direct cremation. Mm-hmm. To explain what direct cremation is or direct burial is, it does not involve any services in the funeral home. There's no visitation, there's no viewing by the family unless they would negotiate that separately with the funeral director. But direct burial means that the funeral director picks up the remains of the loved one who has just died, where either hospital or at home, and takes it back to his business, does the paperwork, the death certificate and other permits that are required, and then oversees either the cremation or the burial. If it's a burial, it goes into a very, very simple wooden casket, and hoping that family has a plot to be used, the funeral director contacts the cemetery, the grave is opened, the funeral director oversees the interment of the body.
Okay. Let's just go back, because now I'm listening to this, I'm part of the audience, and you got us a lot of information. How do I get involved? How, as a consumer, how the membership? There's a membership, you said. So
we do have a membership.
Yeah.
What you can do is just call our office. You can call me, or you can call the office.
But all right, so
membership is very simple. We have a one-page membership form. It's really a pre-arrangement application form. It's not a membership form. It's just that you have the opportunity to choose whether or not you want to be buried or cremated, whether you want the ashes back, and you pick a funeral director.
Oh, okay. So
when someone calls us,
yeah.
we send out a membership packet, which has the application for membership and arrangements. It has the price list for all of our funeral directors, both in Essex and Bergen and Passaic counties. It has a sheet of your consumer's rights. And we should digress here just a little bit.
That's important, yes.
In 1982, the Federal Trade Commission passed what is called the funeral rules. And this was an outgrowth from going all the way back to Jessica Mitford's book on dying in America, Funerals in America, which kind of revolutionized how everybody thought about funerals. The Memorial Society movement just expanded all over the country because of this. And finally, in 1982, the federal government, Federal Trade Commission, devised these rules for the protection of consumers. Okay. So that, for instance, you're entitled to walk into any funeral home and ask for their price list. And they have to have all of their services and all of their products listed on this general price list and general casket price list. And so you don't have to be a customer. You could walk in right off the street and just say, I want your price list. And he has to give it to you. And it has to have everything on it. You don't have to buy anything that you don't want. You're entitled to just buy what you want and for the service that you want for your loved one. You should stay away from package deals. They usually are padded with lots of profit-making things in there, things that you might want. You are entitled not to be embalmed, and this is a very important factor. Embalming is not required by law. There are still many funeral directors who will tell you that if you're going to have an open casket viewing, you've got to be embalmed for public health reasons. And this is absolutely false. There's no law in New Jersey or any state in America that says you have to be embalmed.
Okay.
Only two circumstances. One, if it's a very communicable disease that you died of, like tuberculosis. Two, if you're going to transport the body across state lines. So if, for instance, you're on vacation and you died in California and your family wants to bring your body back for burial, they would have to be involved. Outside of those circumstances, I don't think there's any other in which it would be required. Certainly not for public health reasons in a viewing.
Yeah, I don't think that many people don't know about that. So information is so important that you can get from the Memorial Society. So one of the things is that, and I think I've talked to you about this before because of something that happened in my own life. So I've joined the Memorial Society, and you've given me a packet and probably a lot of information at that time. But now, very often, well, not very often, but thankfully, a lot of time passes before we need to use that information.
Right.
All right, so that is, what do we need to do between after we have joined that organization and the time way up the road that we need that information? What is it that we should be doing, David?
Well, first of all, you should be living a very wholesome, full life.
Absolutely.
Having a lot of fun. But more germane, or more specific to your question, you should, when you join, this pre-arrangement form has 3 copies to it. You keep 1 copy, and you send us 2 copies, and we send 1 copy on to the funeral director. Okay. So they have the records, we have the records, we put it into our database, we also save the paper, and you have this piece of paper. Now, what happens too often is that people say, okay, I'm now a member, and it only costs, by the way, it only costs a one-time lifetime fee to join, and $25 for an individual, once. And $40 for a family. So it is not an expensive thing to join. And so you have this piece of paper, and now what do you do with it? You put it in a file somewhere, and 10, 15 years later, you know, you die, and your family has no idea what it is you wanted.
Absolutely.
Maybe someday you say, well, you know, I joined the society. Well, where is it? Mm-hmm. And ask the Christian. You should make sure that your family knows what your intentions are. Mm-hmm. The key to the whole pre-arrangement thing is that you're doing this for the comfort and safety, not of yourself, because you're not going to be there.
Right.
This is for your family. It's for the survivors, so they don't face the stress of at the last minute. And I run into this so often. I get a call from somebody, Mom just died, what do I do? Well, sometimes we find out your mom was a member. And other times, well, it's too late. She should have joined. And she should have told you about this. And so it's pre-planning. Coming back to that first word that you asked me, pre-planning and talking about what it is what your wishes are. It should be emphasized that this is not a contract. Right. Your family can change it. Your family can say, well, Mom wanted just a simple cremation, but we're going to have a big funeral and she's going to be buried. That's fine with us. You know?
I imagine that happens very often.
It happens. It happens a lot. But if the family loves Mom and respects her wishes, then knowing that she made these arrangements without any prepayment, we do not take any prepayment. The funeral directors don't take any prepayment for the services that they agree that they're going to provide. Okay,
now we're gonna take a break in just a moment.
Okay.
And when we come back, maybe we will get a little bit more details about how to do that. I mean, where, who, and where, and maybe some of the papers and things that people need.
Sure.
That pre-planning paper. Absolutely. That we can get to talking about.
Absolutely.
That. And there are some other things that are coming up that I know you want to share with the audience. So please stay with us. We're going to be coming back to talk to David Lewis, who is, again, of the Memorial Society of Northeast New Jersey, and he has some really important information for us. Thank you.
This is an important message for seniors, family members of seniors, and caregivers of senior adults. The Montclair Senior Citizens Advisory Committee is offering a free workshop on April 24th between 7 and 9 p.m. for caregivers and families of senior adults on the subject of sexual expression. It will take place on the second floor of the Montclair Municipal Building. If you or members of your family would like to attend, please call 973-509-4974. Don't delay, seats are limited, and the enrollment deadline is April 17th. Thank you.
Welcome back. This is TV 34, News and Views, brought to you by the Senior Citizen Advisory Committee of Montclair. We're continuing today to talk with our guest, David Lewis, who is president of the Memorial Society of Northeast New Jersey. David, when we stopped, I think we were at the point of looking at some of the things that are important that we need to know and do now while we're here, all right?
While we're here.
While we're here. And pre-planning, you said that's a key word in terms of memorial,
It
in
is.
terms of our what happens to us afterwards and what happens with our families.
Well, as I said, you really have to talk with your family about what your wishes are. And when you become a member of the Memorial Society, you get the application which states your wishes and what you want to have done, whether you want to be buried or cremated. We also send you as a perk a form called Putting My House in Order. It's a 4-page document with lots of spaces for you to fill in the things that are important to you. The first page is designed to answer all of the questions that the funeral director needs to fill out the death certificate. I mean, how many people in your family know when you were in the Army? I know when I was, but I've never mentioned it to any of my children. That should go on the death certificate. So all of this information on the front page is what is needed for the funeral director to fill out the death certificate.
Is that
On
like the
inside
vital
is
statistics?
personal information, where you keep your personal papers, where your insurance policies are, what your Medicaid records are, medical records, who your doctor is, who you want to, important people that you want to be aware of that you have died or not died yet. And it could, property registration, who holds the mortgage on your property, what are your credit cards, assets that you have that your family should know about, and debts that you have that your family want to know. And then there's spaces here where you can write a suggested obituary if you wanted to, or put down pertinent information that you'd like to have put into your obituary.
Okay,
We
now
think that this is a
not-
very, very important document in keeping your family informed
Okay.
about your own life.
That's what I was going to say. That's for your family.
That's
Now, the whole family, or do we need to think of a person? Is it just too much to leave that for everybody to decide and, who's going to do this and who's going to do that, David?
It depends on the family. I mean, there are families, of course, where everybody is in agreement. Mom wants to be a very simple cremation and a memorial service afterward, and that's fine with me. But I see a lot of families where half the family wants something simple and half the family wants to honor Mom with a big funeral and a big casket, and it gets to be rather difficult. And just as if when you are sick, everybody recommends that you put one person in charge. Make that one person the healthcare proxy to be able to make those decisions to carry out what your healthcare directive is. You can't have one child saying, well, turn off the life support. No, keep the life support on. One person has to make those decisions, and one person should be in charge of making funeral decisions. Then the whole family can sit down and do the memorial service, because that you're celebrating the person's life. A funeral is really mourning the person's death. But a memorial service, you're celebrating the person's life. It's a whole different emphasis and much more positive.
Yeah, and I think I see more and more of that. I mean, at one time it was a funeral, but now I see that people do have memorial services more and more.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Especially among members, like the people who are interested in becoming members of the society and want something simple, these are also the people who want to have memorial services.
Yeah, and I think I have to say this, and I wasn't thinking about it before, but one of the things David said in an earlier conversation was that very often the people who really need to belong to a memorial society, where the cost of a funeral is kept at a, how would you say it? At
a very, very reasonable cost.
Very reasonable cost. Very often they are the people who belong to that kind of society are people who really, the money is not the main problem, but people who might have more of a problem paying for funerals, they are people who don't get or somehow have not joined. Many people really need to think about the Memorial Society because money might not be the main thing, but it is certainly a key factor today, is it not?
Absolutely. Yes. I mean, funerals in New Jersey can easily run $8,000 to $10,000.
Yes.
And that money in a family that it does not have a great deal of money, that money could much better be spent on their children's education or something else, rather than spending all this money on a fancy casket that gets lowered into the ground, and you don't need to honor someone out of guilt.
Okay.
You
Now,
know?
some of the things what are some of the things, David, that you find that people don't know about things at this time? I know one of the things that I guess I didn't think about. I have an aunt who's 99 years old, who's in a nursing home, and all of a sudden it has come up, where's her husband buried? And because you generally would want to put them together, and I'm looking for papers and papers. There are some things, what are some of the things problems that come up that people need to know, or things that they don't know about, David? The alternatives, perhaps?
Well, you do have a lot of options when you're preparing for end of life. As I mentioned, you can be cremated, you can be buried. What type of a cemetery? There's a whole new movement coming out now of green burial. Green burial is environmentally sensitive burying, where you don't have a fancy casket. You have to have nothing but a plain wooden casket. Some of them even insist that the nails, that should be glued together rather than nails. Everything must be biodegradable. Some require, like, you have to take buttons off that are not biodegradable. And the whole purpose of this is the body, without any embalming, anything that is done to it, is lowered to the ground. No vault around it, and the body goes back to nature.
Yeah.
Goes back to the old biblical phrase, dust unto dust. And then there's no grass, it's just field grass. Some people plant a tree on top of the green funeral burial spot. You could have a rock that is from the area that, it has to be a rock. You can't bring a rock from New Jersey and take it up to the green cemetery it's outside of Ithaca, Green Springs it's called. And again, the plot, instead of being a 6 foot by 3 foot, is usually 10 feet square, so that there's no overloading of the earth with the remains of people. You have your own spot, and so that's an alternative. In cremation, they're now, the reefs off of Florida are being disintegrated, and so they've come up with the concrete balls that have big holes in them, and the fish and the reefs can regenerate themselves around this big balls, and so you can have your ashes mixed in with the concrete.
So that there's a lot
you're part of nature.
Pre-planning and choices. There are many choices today that people have not had before, alternatives. And the Memorial Society is a place where you can find out these things. One of the things I think David wanted to share with us is something about the annual meeting, which is coming up.
I appreciate that, yes. Every year, we invite our members to come to an annual conference. And we usually have a speaker. We have a very brief business meeting at the beginning, and then we have an interesting speaker. This year, it will be a man by the name of Mark Harris. He's an author and journalist. He's written a book called Grave Matters, in which the first part of the book, he goes into great detail about what is entailed in a standard funeral.
Okay.
And then the second half of it is alternatives to alternative ways of having a funeral and disposing of one's remains.
Okay.
He touches on home burial, which is something that we have now, where the family themselves take care of preparing their loved one for burial or cremation.
Well, that's kind of going back to where we have come from,
Absolutely.
and many people have felt as though we had gotten and I think that was Mitford, that we had gotten so far away from that. But also, can you say something about volunteers and about places to give your presentations? I think.
Yes, I can. Just to finish about the annual meeting. The annual meeting will take place this year at the Montclair Public Library on Sunday, April 28th at 2 o'clock. It's open to the public. It's free. There's ample parking, off-street parking next door. And we'd love to have you come. There'll be time for questioning and Mark Harris and refreshments after the conference. And we'd love to have you come and be a part of it. I'm sorry, what was your question?
Yeah, I know you said something about volunteers.
Volunteers, yes.
And I think that's an occasion when you could use some volunteers also.
Well, we could always use volunteers. We also, all of the board members are volunteers. It's a 3-year commitment. If somebody was interested, please give us a call. I'd be happy to talk with you about what would be entailed. We also have volunteers who give out brochures, arrange for presentations that I do. I'll travel anywhere in Essex, Bergen and Passaic County. I frequently talk to senior residence communities, hospice groups, churches. We want to get the message out. We think it's important, and give us a call if we can be of assistance to you. We'd love to help you.
All right. And we'd love having you here today, David, and it's been wonderful. And even though it is not a subject that very often we want to deal with, it is a subject that we do have to deal with. And so please remember that there is the annual meeting coming up. And again, I'd like to thank David Lewis, who comes to us from our Northeast Memorial Society. Yes. All right, our president. And
thank you very much.
So much.
Appreciate the opportunity.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today. Again, this is TV 34, and you've just listened to News and Views, brought to you by the Senior Citizen Advisory Committee of Montclair. We would love to hear from you. You'll see our telephone number shown on the screen. Please call us if you have any comments, or you can tune in to us on the web. I'm saying tune in, but I think what I mean is visit us on the web. I'm not too much of a web person, but we'd love to hear from you. Remember, we are an interactive and informative station.